You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, it's me again, Steve Adams or Mighty Blue. This is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And today is the 310th episode. Can you believe that? Every time I put up a new episode, the number always takes my breath away as those numbers keep mounting, I guess as numbers do. And today's guest is another of those remarkable young women who decide that a long spell in the woods is just what they need. Though, as you're going to hear, Kelly Hayes' hike last year turned out far differently than she'd imagined it ever would. We'll hear from Kelly in a moment. And we have another chat with Hugh Eckrath from our class of 2022. If you recall, Hugh has wanted to hike the AT for some time, and this year was going to be his year. Hugh and his lovely wife, Kerry, turned up at our Woods Hole weekend in 2020, and I think I'm right in saying that Kerry only considered doing the AT if she could spend as few nights as possible in the woods. Well, when you hear from Hugh a little later, you'll see how far he's taken those plans. I tell you what, I was exhausted just imagining what it took to organise his schedule. You're going to love it. It's not everybody's cup of tea for hiking the trail, but it's going to work for Hugh and Kerry, and that is literally all that matters. We'll hear from Hugh after Kelly. And we're going to catch up with another of our class of 2022, Sarah Landis, or Sunshine, and she's returned to America from South Korea, which was where we first met her. Unfortunately, the recording was unusable, so we'll be hearing from Sarah and her preparations next week. As a result, the program is shorter than usual, but hopefully just as much fun. So let's get on and meet Kelly Hayes, or 9 Lives. So we've got another one of those intrepid young women on the show today. This is Kelly Hayes, or 9 Lives. Hey, Kelly, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here because you've got quite some story, actually, and you and I had a conversation yesterday, and you told me that you've been hiking all your life, but really only got into backpacking a few years ago. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I've lived in Arkansas my whole life. I've loved to hike ever since I was little, ever since I can remember. And I never really had backpacked before. But one weekend, me and some friends, we decided to go to a local state park that we loved. And we normally would just do 2 different trails. We would always hit those. But we found another trail in that park, and it was 12 miles long, and it was a loop. And we're like, oh, let's do something crazy this weekend. And we hiked these whole 12 miles in one day. Like, that would be...
Isn't it amazing what seems crazy a few years ago?
Yeah, 12 miles is like a Nero
That's right.
now. But back then it was like, whoa, we're doing something. And so we decided to do that, and it took us all day. And but I had the best time ever, and we had ended up renting a campsite in the park, and we car camped there. But my mind was just running when I got back to camp. I was like, that was crazy. Like, what if we hiked 15 miles in a day? What if we did 20? And then I was like, well, what if we hiked that many miles and then camped in the woods and then woke up the next day and did it again? And then I got home and I realized, oh yeah, that's backpacking. And how have I never done backpacking? And so that pushed me into the rabbit hole, and I started doing all sorts of research. And
we'll come back to research in a minute, but so you got in the woods, you'd been hiking, and you'd never done this backpacking thing. Mm-hmm. So what was it about it that seemed so different to you, or so much better to you?
I don't know. I think, I loved hiking, but most of the trails I've done, I'd always done were, 1 to 5 miles. And so you're out there for, 1, maybe 2 hours, and then you go home and it's over. And it's like, wow, that was so much fun. But when you're backpacking, it's more of a full day experience because you're out there and you're kind of living in the woods. And so I think that's what really drawed me into backpacking was I didn't want to go home after 2 hours. I wanted to stay out there and experience nature.
And when you actually got it, and we're going to I'm just jumping ahead for a second here. When you got actually out on the trail and you did spend that period of time in the woods, was it as you imagined it would be? Was it as exciting as you were making it sound when you were talking about it?
Yes, 100%. I just felt when I'm on a backpacking trip or spending, full day out in nature, I just feel this like special sense of calmness because you're just in nature, and there's no people. I mean, there's some people, but there's just not all the noise of like when you're in town or in normal life or whatever. It's just a whole another experience.
It's what Dixie calls the synthetic life, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So where were you in your life at the time with work, relationships and so on? Because you're not in your you're in your late 20s, aren't you? 28 or 29?
I'm 29, yeah.
Right. So where were you in your life when you decided that the AT was something you'd be interested in?
So I had just gone back to school to get my second degree. My first degree was journalism, and I worked in technology sales for a year, and it just wasn't fulfilling for me. And so I decided to go back to school to become a registered dietitian. And I was at the very end of getting my second bachelor's degree in nutrition. And so the next steps after that are having to become a dietitian is you have to get accepted into an internship. And the one I wanted was 15 months, and it was an internship in a master's program, a coordinated program. Right. And so when I found out about the Appalachian Trail, I was banking that I was going to get accepted to this internship because it's not like a guaranteed thing. Sure. And my plan was, okay, I get accepted in this internship. I do it for 15 months. That brings me to September of 2020. And sure. Then I would work for 6 months or so and then start the trail in April of 2022. So that was kind of my thought process there.
And some of that worked out. I saw on your YouTube channel, you're a traveling dietitian, which sounds like a fantastic job to do. Yes. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but what it actually is a traveling dietitian then?
Yeah. So basically, it's kind of like travel nursing. These days, as a healthcare professional, you can pretty much travel doing anything. And there's a bunch of different companies that you can go through. But basically, I work with a recruiter, and there's a bunch of jobs posted, and they're for different lengths of time. So I just finished a month-long contract in Richmond. And so, you just kind of figure out like where you want to work, how long you want to work, and then you work with your recruiter, and they are it's really great because they're the ones that are like basically filling out the job application for you and doing all that like annoying stuff. And so they present you to the client, and if the client accepts, then you start work there. And
I saw this morning you were also working in a COVID field hospital.
How
does that relate then?
Yeah, so that was right before the trail. I worked temporarily right after school at a medical fitness facility because I was working as a assistant dietitian at a local hospital. And so they transitioned me as the lead dietitian, and I only worked there for like 3 months because this travel dietitian opportunity came up, and it was a pop-up COVID field hospital. This is like at the beginning of when COVID was just like, booming. And it was in California. And so this was like the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. I packed up my bags. I drove to California by myself, and I worked this 3-month contract out in California. And it worked out perfectly because the contract ended towards the end of March. And then I started the trail April 10th. So I drove all the way back across the country and had a week at home to get all ready, and then went to Georgia.
and you were living in Airbnbs. You said you've got nothing to sell. You didn't have a place to go. So you're at that point in your life where, and I think this happens to a lot of people or some people, there's a window in your life where it's a possibility, isn't it? And if you don't go through and take that opportunity, you don't do it. It rarely opens again. So you were ready to do this, and you mentioned earlier you said you went down a YouTube rabbit hole, which of course is something we all do at some time. Was that when you started your own channel, or were you waiting had you already started a channel then?
So I had started a YouTube channel. This was like, it was when I first had gotten into backpacking.
All right.
And so I was on I think my second or third backpacking trip ever with a couple friends. And I'd always take a bunch of video when I was backpacking and pictures because I'd want to show my friends and family.
Sure, sure.
And it was during that backpacking hike, we had already gone like 3 or 4 miles. And I was like, you know what? And I was talking to my friends the whole time. I was like, I think I'm going to turn this hike into a YouTube video. And they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so I filmed, and a few months went by, and one night I couldn't fall asleep, and I was like, oh yeah, I have all this footage. Let me just like edit all of this. And I did it on my phone on iMovie. And I think I stayed up till like 5 a.m., created my YouTube account that night, and just posted the video and shared the link with people. And that's how my YouTube channel like was born.
I don't know what camera is it a GoPro you're using?
I have a GoPro and an iPhone that I film with.
Because the picture is so clear. I saw you asking questions. You're sitting on a rock somewhere with a beautiful background. I mean, it's a pretty darn good gig, isn't it, really, to ask the questions. So you were in this rabbit hole. You worked out all your gear and so on. What does your family think about you going on the trip?
I don't think anybody... Well, I've always been the person to like do crazy things. So I think when I told them that I was going to do this, they weren't necessarily surprised, but I don't know if they actually believed that I was actually going to pull it off because there were so many things that needed to happen perfectly for me to be able to leave when I told them I was going to. Sure. And it all happened. But I will say that I think my mom has definitely lost years of her life stressing about me.
I would imagine she has. And we'll come to the reason for that in a minute.
Yes, yeah.
So you got to Georgia. By the way, were you going with somebody or not?
So I was initially going solo, but the very last minute, I mean, it was like days before I left, this girl messaged me on Facebook, and she had seen my gear video on YouTube. And I had mentioned I was from Arkansas, and she had some ties to Arkansas and just kind of reached out on a limb. And we ended up having mutual friends, and we were starting like around the same day. And so we met up at Amicalola and actually started the trail together.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah.
So how are you feeling? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Were you feeling good physically?
Yeah, so all of the above. Nervous, excited, mostly excited. And I've always been a very physically active person. I played college basketball, and, working out is a huge part of my life. So I was in some of the best shape of my life because I had started doing CrossFit for like 6 months before, which even though it's a completely different kind of exercise than hiking, it made me really, really strong and like built up my endurance. So I think that really helped me.
Sure. Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. But it didn't kind of work out that way. And you talked about your mother, taking years of your mother's life, and I feel sorry for her, by the way, because of that.
My poor mom.
So you start out healthy, you start out excited, and the first 2 or 3 days, I watched a couple of those days, and you were looking good, you're looking healthy. But then you woke up on day 6. What happened to you, and where were you? Yeah,
so I woke up day 6, and basically in the worst pain of my life. It started out like kind of a dull-ish pain. I thought maybe I just needed to go use the privy. Sure. And when I went to the privy a couple times, and the pain just kept getting worse.
By the way, I've got to point out here, you're a real trooper because you actually filmed all this while you were feeling some of this pain.
Right, yeah. There was, because I built this routine of like waking up and like talking to the camera, and I remember I was just like wincing. I was like, like not feeling good this morning, like already. Yeah. And so, so I kind of sat there in pain for a while. And some of my trail people that I had started hiking with, they were waiting on me. And so finally I had to like tell somebody like, hey, I'm not really feeling good. You may want to go on without me. But 2 people stayed behind and were waiting on me, which I'm so grateful for now.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah. And, we started to think that maybe it was either trapped gas in my stomach or I was dehydrated. And so we started to try to get some fluids down me. They mixed up some of those Powerade packets, and I was chugging that. And then shortly after that, I started throwing up, and I threw up all of that liquid. We had a Walmart bag, and I filled the entire Walmart bag of just everything.
Wonderful visual. Wonderful visual.
Yeah, like just being blunt.
You should have had a picture of that one then.
I know. It was impressive. I was like, I can't believe that all came
That was all
out.
inside me. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so at that point, that's when I knew that something was not right at all. Because, I mean, you don't just throw up that much.
And what were you thinking then? And the reason I say this is that, it didn't happen to me. Actually, I got hung up. I did the half-gallon challenge and I was sick. So that wasn't the same thing at all. I was just being an idiot. You didn't know you weren't actually sick, although you felt you probably were. And yet you're several miles away from anywhere. Were you scared at that point?
Honestly, thinking back, like, I was in so much pain at that point. Like, I was scared, but I was just trying to, like, make it through, I guess. Like, right. My brain was not functioning, and I'm, like I said, so glad the two girls stayed behind with me, because without them, I don't know what I would have done, because I think I probably would have just laid there, because I couldn't process anything at that point.
But isn't that one of the things you learn on the trail? There's absolutely no point in just lying there, is there? Because no one's going to help you unless you do it yourself.
Yeah.
So you had to get up and get out, didn't you? So what did you do?
Yeah. So the two girls that stayed behind with me were Mighty Mouse, and that was the girl I'd started the trail with, and then another girl named Stephanie. And Stephanie is former Navy, and her military came out, and she was like, all right, we're getting you out of here. You're going to get out of here. She looked in my face and was like, you're leaving. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she actually carried her pack out and my pack out. And it was around 10:30. I was just laying there in the fetal position, like shaking. Oh my gosh. Was it getting worse at this stage, Kelly? Oh, yeah. I mean, like, every passing second, the pain was like worsening. Right. And so I finally, got out of my tent and kind of did like I couldn't stand up. I was bent all the way over, like 90 degrees. Right. And I kind of did like a few like trial loops around the campground. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to try to do this, like, let's go. And so the girls were still packing up their stuff. And I was like, I got to go, like, or I'm not going to get out of here. And so I took off before them, and I was ahead of them pretty much the entire time back out. But yeah, we had to hike 4.5 miles back southbound to Hogpen Gap. Isn't that the worst bit? Going backwards. Miles you've already done before. You just couldn't have been thinking about it then. So you got to Hogpen, and what'd you do then? How'd you get out? So we had actually, it was day 6, so we hadn't gone into town to resupply or anything. And so that day, the plan was to hike 9 northbound to Unicoi Gap and get picked up by Miss Bonnie from Your Home in the Woods B&B. We were going to stay there and resupply. Well, I guess one of the girls called her and like let her know what was going on. And so she picked up half of our tramley at Unicoi Gap because they had left earlier in the day. And then she drove to Hogpen Gap and was there. She pulled up literally right as I was like coming down that hill. That's trail magic. That is trail magic, isn't it? It just happens, doesn't it, on the trail? It happens so many times, it's remarkable. But she turned up on time. So you got there, you got into her car. What happened then? At that point, I was like, I have to go to somewhere and get seen. But I was worried about insurance. And so I was like, take me to Prime Care because, if you go to the ER, you're going to be hit with a big bill. So they took me actually to Prime Care first. And I walked in, there was nobody at the counter. And I was like, oh my gosh. And basically the doctor finally came out and was like, well, we can't do anything to you. You need to go to the ER. They wanted to call the ambulance. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be in medical debt for the rest of my life. I will walk there. So luckily, one of the nurses at Prime Care was nice enough to drive us to the hospital. Cool. And I got there and sat in the waiting room for an hour on the floor, literally just like rolling around in pain. And they finally got me back. Was it getting worse now, or had it settled into a kind of thing? It was just getting worse, was it? It was getting worse. Okay. It was still getting worse. They give you anything? Nothing. The lady, I was like, I think I'm dehydrated. And it was like, well, all the beds are full and you're going to have to wait. And the one thing that got me is like, I'm sitting in the waiting room. I'm like feeling like I'm about to die. And here comes in this pregnant lady. She's about to pop. And they, and she didn't wait at all. They just took her straight back. And I was like, hello, I'm dying here.
Kids don't wait for you, I'm afraid.
I was like, oh my gosh. So, but anyway, they finally got me back, and it, again, like, they wouldn't let me drink. They wouldn't let me eat because they had to do the tests.
Sure.
And I think they gave me morphine first, and this is how I knew I was in like serious pain, is they gave me morphine and it did nothing.
Wow.
I think it took the pain away for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then after that, like, I could feel it coming back, and I was like, no. But they were still like having to run all these tests. They wanted to do a CT scan. They ended up having to do an ultrasound. And so 5 or 6 hours later, after I got into the hospital, the doctor comes in a frenzy and is like, you're about to have emergency surgery. You have an eggplant-sized cyst that's about to rupture, and we need to get you up immediately. And within the next 30 minutes, the doctor came in, quickly explained the surgery. I was on the phone with my mom and grandma, and I was like, next thing I knew, I'm on the operating table upstairs. So it was very quick turnaround.
Without being too graphic about it, I saw one of your videos, I think when you were telling the story of this, showing some of your pictures. It wasn't small, was it? It was eggplant size.
Eggplant size.
You hadn't felt it at all before that?
No, and that's the craziest part, is I had no idea prior to it. And the doctor literally said it was like the biggest cyst that he had ever seen. And I was like a medical marvel. The nurses and everybody were just like, she hiked 4.5 miles with this in her, like, they were all.
And yet 1 ovary later. So you lost an ovary,
mm-hmm.
and you said there's no long-term complications with that as far as you understand.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 weeks after this happened to you, you were back on trail. Was there any doubt about going back?
Yes and no. I mean, I had lost an entire organ, so it was like, okay, this is gonna set me back, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep up, because I skipped up 200 miles to stick on pace with my tramline and go back with them.
Yeah.
And I was worried that I wasn't going to keep up with them. I was more worried that I was going to slow them down, and that stressed me out more than anything.
Right.
And those were pretty much my 2 main concerns.
And when you got back on the trail, I presume that's when you got your name 9 Lives, isn't it?
Yeah, so I went a long time without a trail name, and because everybody just knew me as Kelly Hayes from YouTube. That was for the longest time. Yeah, but it was I got to Bear Garden in Virginia, and a girl I was hiking with named Lost and Found. She was hiking all day that day, and she's like, "I thought of a trail name for you," and I was like, "What is it?" And she said 9 Lives, and I was like, you know what? That's perfect. That is so perfect.
So you became 9 Lives. How cool is that? I
became 9 Lives, yes, sir.
And it wasn't a good start, was it? Well, it was a beautiful start because you got back on trail at Max Patch. And I was watching the video this morning, you walking up the stairs to those steps to Max Patch. It took me right back there. Both my hikes, I remember those steps up there, and you see this amazing view. I saw it amazing view first time, but not second time because it was socked in with fog. What was it like to be up there? Because that makes you really feel you're back into the hike, doesn't it? Being on Max Patch. Yeah,
it was an awesome place to hop back on trail. It was like a magical experience getting back on trail. Like, the day was awesome. I did like a short little 8-mile hike and met up with my tramline at the shelter or whatever. But
yeah, you had a tough time though, didn't you? Yeah, you had a tough time, didn't you?
I did. It was the worst night collectively on my entire thru hike. We camped on top of this hill. It was really cold. The wind was just going straight through my tent. I had kind of a cheaper sleeping bag back then, and it didn't keep me warm at all. And I was having like anxiety attacks, and I just wasn't completely prepared for like how tough it was going to be mentally coming back onto the trail.
Because they were 200 miles ahead of you in terms of their experience on the trail and the rhythm. Were you able to keep up with them most of the way? Or did you just were you struggling with that?
I told them, I was like, I do not want you guys to slow down for me on my accord. If you guys want to push more and I decide that I can't go, then I will camp and catch up with you guys at another point. Sure. But I knew that, I had to push myself, because if I was going to make it to Katahdin, I couldn't be hiking 8 or 10 miles every day. Like I needed to be.
Because you started April, didn't you? So the time was starting to go on as well. So how were you able to make that mindset switch then? Because you had that terrible first night. Did you consider quitting then, or what happened after that to change your mind?
Yeah, so the next day after that terrible night, we hiked down to Hot Springs. I stayed at Laughing Heart Hostel, and I started experiencing really bad vertigo. My whole world was spinning, and I was like, oh, this is terrible.
Sure, yeah.
And the people who had dropped me off at the trailhead at Max Patch, they were coming back on their way back home. They were going back towards where I was. And I had an option at one point. They called me because I'd been, updating them on everything. And they said, we can come swing by and pick you up and take you back home. And so I remember the exact moment I was sitting on that bed and I had to decide, am I going to stick this out on trail or am I going to go home and be miserable there? And basically it boiled down to, if I go home, I go to the doctor and say, hey, I feel dizzy. Like the doctor's going to be like, okay, well, there's nothing really I can do about it. And then I'm going to sit in bed and be depressed and wish I was back out there. Or I can choose to take it day by day, push myself on trail and just, deal with what I'm dealing with out here. And like I said, just take it day by day and do the best I can do.
And you were with obviously friends by then. So did they help you? And funny enough, I was thinking this morning also, did having a channel help you, a YouTube channel help you as well? Because you must have, I know you got a lot of people who subscribe to your channel. Did they encourage you on the channel?
They did. I got to say, my subscribers and like people who have supported me this whole trip, like I think they really did play a part in helping me with this because I had so many people praying for me and I would, read through my messages on Instagram and YouTube and just having that encouragement and just knowing that people were out there like praying for me and like caring about like my journey. It just really helped me like emotionally to press forward. And like it wasn't just about me anymore. It was like about like I want to do this and show people like you don't like to not give up, and to follow your dreams and stuff like that.
I do understand that. I podcasted when I went in 2019. So I podcasted on the trail. At the end of every day, I wasn't looking forward to podcasting some days, but, you do it because you got people who support you. And that support kind of lifts you and keeps you going, doesn't it?
It sure does.
And I actually want to move on to towards the end, actually. And it was something you said in one of your videos. You're a couple of days away from Baxter. Of course, you see that first amazing view of Katahdin, or the one first time you'd seen it across the Pembroke Lake. And even though you knew it wasn't the end for you, you were just approaching Katahdin, because you said this is because you didn't actually speak much in the video, but you overdubbed it. You said one of our last walks in the Maine woods together. What did that feel like? Because you were you felt it sounded very emotional, even though you were speaking after the event because you had this beautiful footage. So what were you feeling like in those last few days?
Man, that it's an unexplainable feeling. There were a lot of emotions that hit throughout the day, and like I could cry now just even thinking about it.
I can see you could, yeah.
Just a lot of emotion, because it was a crazy journey to get there. And here I am, like at the base of Katahdin, and all this has happened. And the 100-mile wilderness was a fairy tale. It was the most beautiful weather ever. And I was just so grateful and thankful that everything happened the way that it did. And like looking back, I wouldn't have changed anything at all because it all just ended up so perfectly. And I don't know. It was... I get chills thinking about it.
I would tell, because you called it, what did you call it? It was called The Pure Bliss in the 100-Mile Wilderness. And it felt like it looking at it as well. So if people go and look at your channel, they should look for Pure Bliss in the 100-Mile Wilderness. It was amazing, it really was. And your Katahdin video, which was obviously just a couple of days later, that was the end of the hike for some of your friends, wasn't it? Though it wasn't for you. Mm-hmm. But it was still very emotional for you, wasn't it? Was it more of that feeling that you'd experienced in the 100-mile wilderness, but now the knowledge that it was that journey with your friends was over with?
Yeah. So it's like I almost had, there was almost three parts to my thru hike. And I knew that was like my biggest chapter. I'd met
Sure.
all these friends. I'd hiked thousands of, 1,000 miles, more than 1,000 miles with all of them. And I knew that after that day, like everything was going to change. I still had 200 miles left, but I wouldn't be with these people anymore. It would be a new chapter and completely different. And it was sad. It was happy. It was, I don't know. It was triumphant. And I was happy for them because they were actually done. And even though like I wasn't done, I felt like I had accomplished a lot at that point. And I was happy and proud to be there.
So what was your plan then? You knew you went up Cotard and you touched the sign, and it is a magical moment for everybody, I know. But you still had those miles to do. When and where did you start back? Or did you just go straight back down and carry on and finish? Or did you go home for a while?
So I didn't really have a plan as usual, but I got home. I knew I had to get home, and there was a few things I needed to get taken care of. And so I was home for 2 weeks, and pretty quickly after I got home, I started, okay, I got to figure out how to get back on trail. I didn't waste much time. So I got everything set and got back on trail. Can't remember exactly the day. I think it was November 1st. It was November 1st. And started back at Max Patch. And going south. Well, we did it kind of differently. I did it with Sunshine. She thru-hiked the AT in 2018.
Yeah, she was on the show. She was on the show, wasn't she?
Yeah, so you guys probably remember her on the show. We met on Instagram, and she was so excited. She wanted to get back on trail, so it was perfect because she was like, I need this, and I was like, I need this, and we did it a little differently that last 200 miles. I had my van, and she had her car, and we flip-flopped cars, so we were hiking north, but our cars were moving south.
Nice, good idea, really good idea. So where was your personal summit day? Was it back at the shelter that you'd left, or was it back at Hogpen Gap?
It was at the shelter. So Low Gap Shelter was my Katahdin. That's where that's where I woke up. It's like I think I'm the only thru-hiker ever to finish their hike at Low Gap Shelter.
It's always going to be special for you for that reason.
Yeah. It was kind of funny too, because we're like celebrating, and I have a crown on my head, and there's like 3 section hikers. They're there, and
you
they're
never sent me that picture. You should send me that picture.
Oh, I should. I need to. I have one of Sunshine actually crowning me at Low Gap Shelter.
That'd be cool. Cool. Yeah.
But these 3 section hikers were so confused. They're like, what is going on? I was like, I told them the whole story, and they're just like, what? Like, it was funny.
So now you're back home, and when did you finish? I've got it written down somewhere. I can't remember.
November
When did you finish?
15th, I want to say.
So you haven't been home a huge amount of time. How are you feeling? Do you feel down? Do you feel up? What are you feeling?
So I got home, and, I wanted to stay. I hadn't been home for like over a year. So I stayed at my parents' house and spent time with my family through Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that time was really, really hard because it was over. At that point, it was over. I'd done everything. There was no go back and do 200 miles type thing.
Sure.
And I met my current boyfriend on the trail, and his name's James, and Toasty, if you guys watched my vlogs. But I was really missing him because we'd spent every day together since we met halfway through the trail. So that was tough, and we still weren't like officially dating at that point, so it was kind of like trying to figure that out too. And I didn't know what I was going to do the next coming months. Was I going to work? Was I going to just edit, do YouTube? So there's all these questions, and it was a tough time, I will say.
Everybody has it. Everybody has it, Kelly.
It
just happens to everybody. Once they get home, they feel a little bit out of sorts. They're not quite sure where they fit in anymore. And I think your life takes a shift that you don't expect it to, and it just does.
It does. And I've said it, I'm like, the trail ruined me, because now, like, I don't know if I can ever be like 100% happy, like just living the mundane, like regular life. Because I know
don't know why I'm laughing, because I know how you feel sometimes. it's kind of weird. So what is next? What did you work anything out? Do you know where you are now? What you're going for now? What are you aiming for?
Yeah, so I ended up picking up that dietitian contract. I was out in Richmond, which was an hour away from James. So,
Sure.
that was really nice. And now I'm back in Arkansas, and my plan now is just to continue saving up for the PCT, which is going to be my next thru hike. I guess I haven't mentioned that yet.
No.
So yeah, that's the next plan. And I'll be starting that one in April with James. And Sunshine,
Nice.
Sunshine is going to be on trail too. And Tripod, who is also part of my tramily on the Appalachian Trail as well.
Oh, you'll have a blast. It's funny, actually. I would think coming to the trail as a group who met each other on another trail must be such a whole different dynamic than just going by yourself. So I think it's a nice combination of things. Well, look, I think you've got a fascinating, strange story. I'm glad the ovaries are sorted out, and you're okay. By the way, did you feel any physical problems with them once you got back, or was it all okay?
I would say it was hard because where my incisions were right where my backpack laid.
Oh gosh.
So that was tough. They were still really sore. And like, if I contracted my abdominal muscles, like coughed or sneezed, like it was just this sharp shooting pain.
Oh gosh.
And that lingered for 2 or 3 weeks until everything was like completely healed. But I just tried to be really smart about, I did slack pack a lot when I could just to get my endurance up. And that really helped me. So,
well, these people who say you shouldn't slack pack have obviously never slack packed. It's one of the greatest things in the world, isn't it? Do it every single time. Every single time.
I know.
Well, look, thanks for coming on the show. I wish you well on the PCT, and come back on the show and tell us about your PCT hike.
I would
with
love
sunshine.
to.
Come back on with sunshine. That'd be really cool.
Oh, that'd be a hoot. We'd have fun with that one.
Exactly. Okay. Well, good talking to you. Okay. And we'll speak again soon. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
My God, can you imagine? I'm sure that a lot of people would have put it off for a year or maybe put it off altogether. But Kelly reasoned, rightly in my view, that she'd regret coming off the trail, and she decided to go ahead, even after that difficult first night back. I know you've heard me say it before, but these young women, fierce just doesn't do them justice. And check out her YouTube, especially that one called Pure Bliss in the 100-Mile Wilderness. I knew exactly how she felt. Thanks, as always, to those of you who've donated to our shows this week. Monthly donors Suzanne Johnson and Todd Withrow were there again for us, while Cheryl Moore made a generous donation and wrote, "I very much enjoy the podcast. I grew up in East Tennessee and have wonderful memories of hiking and backpacking with my father." Thanks, Cheryl, not only for the donation, but for allowing us to remind you of that connection with your father. As always, you can donate by clicking on any one of the numerous donate buttons on the hikingradionetwork.com website, where you'll find all the show notes, pictures and links to all 7 of our hiking shows. Now, a few days ago, I got an email update from my friend Hugh Eckreth and the preparations he's making to help you and his wife Kerry ease into the trail. I had to have him on the show to go through it all with you. It is awesome. Here's Hugh. So we're back on with one half of the Hugh and Kerry Eckreth duo. This is Hugh. Hey, Hugh, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. And you sent me an email the other day, which was spectacular. As people know, you're doing this Platinum Blaze, and it is. You said that you've got in place accommodations for the first 31 days.
Yep.
And you're going to cover, is it 234 miles? Yep. You can take 5 zeros. How many times are you staying in a tent?
0. 0.
Excellent effort. So
0.
in 31 days, you will not. Are you going to carry a tent, by the way?
That's funny that you asked that. So I had an epiphany this past weekend. I was telling Carrie, I said, you know what, Carrie, it crossed my mind. I just finalized all of the accommodations and the shuttles, and I thought, well, I don't see a need to carry this stuff. I mean, I see it in our future, but it's still cold. It's still new. We're still probably alone most of the time. Yeah. That's just not conducive to us, being comfortable out there. So
That was hilarious. And just to give people an idea, you're staying at the Open Arms Hostel in Luray for 4 nights. So they're going to slack pack you, are they?
No, actually, this is kind of exciting. This is really what we had hoped would happen along this journey, is that people will join us and be part of it one way or another. So my sister-in-law, the one who cried right out of the gate, she's going to join us for the first week.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
So she's going to get up. We'll have breakfast together. She'll drop us off, and I'll give her the waypoints, through Gut Hook, and I'll also have a map for her. So she's a little nervous about that part, but you can't go too far wrong on Skyline Drive. So we keep telling her that.
Yeah, you think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So once the family got over the shock and awe, are they now kind of enthusiastic about it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you got the Open Arms Hostel, as I say. Then you're in Lydia's Cabins for 3 nights. Where's Lydia's Cabins?
I guess the area is actually called Lydia.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Nice.
And it's about 35 to 40 miles down Skyline Drive from Luray.
Nice.
Or from Thornton Gap.
And then you're not you are at Stanimals, but you're in they've got a tiny house. They didn't have one of that in 2019, I don't think, did they?
No, I think it's new. That was the indication I got.
How big is it? How tiny is it? Your tent could be bigger.
Yeah. Well, I understand you have to go outside to change your mind. So, that tells you.
It's going to be cozy. You're going to have to get on well with each other.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And then you're going to the Great Devil's Backbone. You're going to love it there. You're just going to absolutely love it there. And
well,
you've got an Airstream there.
Yeah, the Airstream trailer. That's right.
So where's that located?
I don't. It's on the grounds there somewhere. Just a 5-minute walk to the brewery.
And the burger and the brewery and the hiker's breakfast, all those great things you're going to be experiencing, which I loved it there as well.
Yeah, I've heard you and others, rave about it. So.
And then you go to Stanimals in Glasgow for 10 days.
Yeah, so they'll be, I'll go back to Stanimals in Waynesboro inside for, I think, 3 days.
Right.
And then they'll hand me off to Glasgow.
Right.
And I talked to Charlie there, and he's got the shuttles and everything arranged for a long stay.
So you're basically moving in.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great atmosphere at Stanimals. I think you're really going to enjoy both those places. I really enjoyed them. But stay in the same place for 10 nights. There are limited food options, I seem to remember. Or you'll probably be able to just hit the whole menu. I can't remember what the name of the place is in the town, but it's kind of limited. But you can just you're hiking, so you'll still be with hikers and that, so you'll be fine. And then you got the Black Lantern Inn, which is where's that?
That is east of the trail, southeast of Daleville, and they're just a 15-minute drive from the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Right.
And they said that they'd be willing to give me a couple of shuttles back and forth for 2 days there. And it's an organic farm. It's like goats and chickens and stuff.
Nice.
And you can, walk around amongst them. And it's a nice 10-acre parcel.
And then in case you feel like you're roughing it too much, you've got 5 nights at the Holiday Inn Express in Trouteville.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's your 31 days. So tell me, Kerry's not on the line today. So how is she looking at this?
Well, I think the way she's described it to a number of family and friends as different places to stay, and instead of driving to them like we normally do, we're just walking. We're just walking from one, destination to another. It's all about the destination for her.
Absolutely. She did make that clear before. Yeah. But the walking's still going to be lovely. Shenandoah isn't challenging at all, so it'd be a really good start to get your legs going and so on. So I think you'll enjoy that part of it as well. Mm-hmm. And of course, you got the chance of seeing bears early on as well in Shenandoah, which is a good thing, by the way. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's not. She would not agree with that statement. That's number one on her, I think, list of things that are really kind of weighing on her.
So I know you've been looking forward to this for some time now, and you're going out. I've got the date somewhere, written somewhere. What date are you going out?
March 13th, so it's a month from this past Sunday.
Yeah, so it's actually it's the day I've been organising a family lunch in the UK. Funnily enough, on March the 13th.
Nice.
I'll think about you when you're on the way out that day.
Yeah.
So you're heading out there. So it's getting closer now, and I know it's getting closer because my trip to the UK is getting closer.
Yep.
How are you feeling? You feeling excited? You feeling now that the first month is sorted out?
I've got a bit of relief now that I have the accommodation squared away, so I know that Carrie will be comfortable. But now, it's definitely nervous.
And so what happens after that though? You come up to your fifth. You just get up for breakfast after 5 nights of the Holiday Express.
Yep.
What happens then?
Yeah. So if you remember, Bruce said this is the day when you reevaluate if you want to do this for 5 more months.
Right. You know what? That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. And and I think that's what we'll do. We'll see where we stand. I've certainly looked at the gut hooks heading south from there, and I certainly would love to get back to Neville's place, and I had such two really great nights there.
Yeah.
So we really want to get back there. So maybe that'll be our next goal.
And you've got McAfee Knob as well, haven't you? You got from Darville to Four Pines. We pretty well. Maybe
so that's an
Four
interesting
Pines.
one because we're going to do that from, I think, 2 different directions. We're going to come up in the middle.
Nice.
Hike back to Daleville one day and get up the middle and hike south another day. So
you actually have got plans beyond there. You just haven't got accommodation quite sorted out yet.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, dear me. I'll tell you what, man. I'm exhausted just listening to you.
It's really fun.
Walking's going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be easy for you compared to all this organisation.
Yeah. Well, I have told so many people it is remarkable what gut hooks, / far out, what they enable you to do. As far as planning wise.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
yes.
right. Honest to God, I mean, I don't want to sound like a crazy person, but, right down to where the privies are, for Carrie. I mean, I have it all down to the 10th of a mile. I gotta try and plan as much of this stuff out so we don't have as few surprises as possible, at least for this first month while we're getting our sea legs.
Well, you're certainly a details guy, aren't you? So, you've got details there. I think you will, something will happen and it won't work out quite how you imagine. So you might want to hold on to that tent. You never know.
Yep.
And, all I would say is I'm glad you have that because it feels like that. It must feel like a weight off your mind. You don't have to worry about it for a month.
Yeah.
You can enjoy the hike itself and enjoy the walk and enjoy the company of the people around you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you certainly remember Kate Phoenix. She's offered to give me some help, in the Waynesboro area. And I'll probably, she doesn't even know this because I haven't caught back up with her, but try and take her up on some help with slack pack on cool. One of those days. It's really, I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah, I tell you, all the wives and girlfriends are thinking, man, that guy must really love his wife and wanted to go with him. Oh my God.
Well, I certainly have my faults, but I'm trying my best to, look after her needs.
I'll tell you what, that is so cool. All right, man. Well, look, great to talk to you. I'm glad to see you got the first month out of the way. Hopefully, but we will, in fact, touch base before I go away, okay?
Yep.
Okay, man. Well, take it easy. Speak to you soon, all right?
And, certainly thinking about your trip, I hope you have a great time.
Cheers. Appreciate it.
All right. See ya.
Cheers. Bye. Now, I'm guessing that this wasn't what Benton Mackay had in mind when he first thought of the AT. But heck, why on earth not? If there's anything I've learned from doing this podcast is that every single one of my guests who have done a long hike have done it uniquely. Not one person does exactly the same hike as another person, which, by the way, is one of the things that makes hiking and backpacking so infinitely wonderful, exciting and entertaining. I know there's going to be purists out there scoffing at this, but get over yourselves. Hugh wanted to share the experience with Kerry, and he's gonna. Good on you, Hugh. By the way, I mentioned that Dom Tammaro, who we heard from last week, was carrying a bear canister instead of a bear bag. And I was interested, and I asked him to send me a picture of how it fits onto his Nunatech Bear's Ears 50 pack. I didn't include it in the show notes last week, but I've added it this week. And by the way, please remember that I'm looking for suggestions on books to read when I return from my trip to the UK in the middle of April. Just email me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com and I'll find out from the author if he or she, there's a thought, minds me sharing their book with you. I'll see you next week.